Hello, welcome back to Algebra 1. We have 3 more problems I'm going to do in this sequence here, learning how to solve these multi-step equations. And they'll be a little bit challenging, but I think you'll learn something from them. 8 minus 2x over 5. Well, this one isn't quite so challenging, but again, zeros for some reason scare a lot of students. You handle this the same way as the other problems. You can't really deal with the 8, you can't really deal with the negative 2, but it's very easy to deal with the 5. So do that first. We'll multiply both sides by 5, because by doing that, we'll cancel him on both sides, or on the right-hand side. 2x over 5. So we'll multiply the left by 5 and the right by 5, and what that does is cancel this out, because 5 divided by 5 is 1. Now on the left-hand side, 0 times 5 still gives you 0, and you have 8 minus 2x. So you can't do anything with the 2x, get rid of the 8. That's a positive 8, so you'll handle him by subtraction. Subtract 8 from the left, 8 minus 2x. So we'll be subtracting on the right. And so what we'll have on the right, this is going to go out to 0. And so on the left, you'll have negative 8. And on the right, you have negative 2x. So what you will do is divide both sides by what to get x by himself? Well, you divide this side by negative 2, and you'll divide this side by negative 2. And so the negative 2's cancel, that's why we're doing it. And on the left-hand side, what is negative 8 divided by negative 2? 8 divided by 2 is 4. Negative divided by negative is positive. So it's positive 4 equals x. So x is equal to 4. And that's the correct answer. And if you stick him back in here, put the 4 in here, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 8 gives you 0. So there's a 0 on the top divided by the 5 still gives you 0, so it checks out. And you always want to do that for yourself just to make sure you're not wasting your time with the wrong answer. Now this problem's a little more complicated. It's not that hard, but you know, we just have to do things one step at a time. V plus 2 is equal to negative 5. How do you handle this? The 2 is too deeply involved in the middle of this problem. The fraction is the same sort of deal. You have this 1 hanging out here. You want to handle and go outer to inner when you do equations. So it's a positive 1, so you'll handle it by subtracting 1. So minus 3/4, v plus 2 equals negative 5 minus 1. All we did was subtract 1 from this side and subtract 1 from that side. That means this goes to 0, so you still have negative 3/4, v plus 2. And on the right-hand side, what is negative 5 minus 1? We've done this kind of thing enough times. You should know that's negative 6. You add them together and it's going to be a negative number. Now what do? There's a lot of different ways to proceed. You can't do anything here. The only way to get rid of this 2 would be to subtract 2, but if you start subtracting 2, it's not going to cancel because this is all wrapped up inside. So you have to deal with the numbers outside first. All right, and you can either deal with them all at once or you can deal with them separately. First, I'll just choose to focus on the 4. How do I get rid of the 4? Well, I multiply this by 4, and I multiply this by 4, left and right-hand side, so that this 4 in the bottom cancels with this 4 on the top. So what I'm going to have is negative 3 times v plus 2. The 4's are gone now. What is negative 6 times 4? Negative 24. Okay, because negative times positive is negative. Now what do? I want to get rid of this negative 3. How do I get rid of that? Well, I divide the entire left side by negative 3 and the entire right side by negative 3. And when I do that, the negative 3 cancels with the negative 3. So all I have left on the left is v plus 2. I can drop the parentheses now, equals. What is negative 24 divided by negative 3? It's positive 8 because negative divided by negative is positive. And finally, to get the v by himself, I have this plus 2. I'll just subtract 2 from the left and 2 from the right. So all I have on the left is v, and all I have on the right, 8 minus 2 is 6. This is the final answer. And again, I'll leave it as an exercise to you, but if you take the sticks, you stick it into there, and deal with the fraction and deal with the subtraction, you're going to find out the answer you get is negative 5. All right? So I want to do one final problem, but I want to give myself a little more room. So I'm going to shift things up here a little bit. And the last problem that we're going to do is going to be parentheses, x minus 13 minus x minus 5 plus 2x is equal to 0. Now this one's interesting because you have two sets of parentheses, and you have an x here and an x here and an x here. Anytime you see x's in different, or variables in different positions, you want to combine them together. And so you want to combine the like terms, but you have these parentheses here, and that makes it a little bit weird. But this parenthesis really isn't even really needed. It's written there to kind of confuse you. there's a positive 1 out here, you could distribute it in, but really all you're going to get is x minus 13. So you can kind of drop that parentheses. But here you have a negative 1 implied. You need to distribute that in. So negative 1 times x is going to give you negative x. And negative 1 times negative 5 is going to give you positive 5. So you have to make sure you understand multiplication. Negative times negative is positive. The 2x is just unchanged, equal to 0. So now you're in a position where you can make some progress. So what you realize is you have an x here, you have a negative x here, and you have a 2x here. You want to combine them. So you want to add them together. So this is 1x, and this is negative 1x. Well, right away you can see that those are going to kind of cancel because negative x, I'm sorry, over here you have positive x and negative x. Those annihilate and give you 0. So the only real x you have is the 2x over here. So you have 2x, and let's just rewrite the whole problem to make it a little easier. Minus 13 plus 5 is equal to 0. I didn't do anything else. I just took the 2x, I wrote him first. The minus 13 goes here, the 5 goes here. Now, what is negative 13 plus 5? You subtract them. 13 minus 5 is going to give you 8, right? 13 minus 5 is going to give you 8, but the sign goes with the larger absolute value. So you have negative 13, so the larger absolute value is a negative sign. So what you're going to have is 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. And now this problem looks similar to everything else we've done. You want to get rid of the negative 8. So you add 8 to both sides. And that basically gets rid of it. This goes to 0 here. So you have 2x on the left. What is 0 plus 8? That's 8. And finally, to get x by itself, since it's multiplied, you're just going to divide both sides by 2. The 2 cancels with the 2. And on the left-hand side, you're going to have x. And on the right-hand side, what is 8 divided by 2? That's just 4. And that's the final answer. You get the one thing here. The only tricky, it's not really that tricky. The only thing that's interesting about this problem you have to be careful about is what do you do with these parentheses? See, here you have an implied 1 out here. And so, yeah, you're distributing the 1 in, but what's 1 times x? Well, it's just x. What's 1 times negative 13? It's negative 13. So you can kind of drop the parentheses here. But here it was negative 1. There's an implied 1 here. Times x gives you negative x. Negative 1 times positive 5. Times negative 5. Negative times negative gives you positive 5. The 2x comes along for the ride. Then you start collecting terms. You have a 1x and you have a negative 1x. They add up to give you 0, so that's why I scratched through them. And the only x's you have left is this one, and then the rest of the problem just proceeds as we have discussed. So that's the only thing tricky about that. Now, we've spent quite a bit of time with equations. It's probably one of the most important things you can do in algebra because it teaches you how to use things like the distributive property. It teaches you how to add, subtract, and multiply and divide all of those real negative and positive numbers. And all of the stuff is wrapped up together, and you have to master all of those things to get the right answer. So it's really important. If you've watched all these lessons and you haven't solved any problems yourself, you need to stop now, grab some paper, go back and solve the exact same problems I'm giving you. Just don't look at the screen, just write them down after I put them on the board. Solve them yourself. Make sure you can solve them and get the right answer yourself. Doesn't matter if you just watch me solve them. Do them yourself. And then whenever you've got that under control, let's go on to the next lesson where we're going to continue solving equations, but they'll be slightly different. You'll see what the differences are, and over time, you'll just become a master at solving equations, which is one of the most important things in Algebra 1.